Welcome to Beauty Confidential, Conversations from the Lounge, the place where unscripted conversations meet the real behind-the-scenes experiences of the beauty industry. I'm your host, Krystina Wilson, and we talk about the real work that goes into all of the stages of product development in the beauty industry, from detailed briefing to raw material innovation, legal and regulatory support, trends, devices and technology, and everything in between. We talk about the boxes that need to be checked before a product ever reaches the shelf and the fires that inevitably need to be put out along the way. So get comfortable, grab a seat, and let's get the conversation started. Welcome to the lounge.
This episode of Beauty Confidential is brought to you by Creative Solutions Consulting, the beauty industry's behind-the-scenes powerhouse. From packaging engineering and product development to supply chain strategy, compliance, and operational guidance, Creative Solutions Consulting partners with brands to bring thoughtful, high-performance products from concept to shelf. Whether you're launching, scaling, or rebranding, we help you build beautifully and intelligently. Learn more at creativesolutionsconsulting.com.
Welcome to another episode of Beauty Confidential, Conversations from the Lounge, where we are already looking ahead at 2027. Yes, already 2027. We're only in almost February of 26, but that's how the beauty industry is. Beauty is entering a new ingredient era, no longer defined by hype, but by performance, proof, and responsibility. In this episode, we speak with Eric Ginsberg, a business development manager for Evonik Industries, a global chemical company headquartered in Germany. Evonik develops high-performance ingredients using biotech, green chemistry, and sustainability. Eric helps us break down the ingredient and raw material trends shaping the future of skincare and beauty, from organic and locally sourced botanicals to biotech actives, upcycled ingredients, and vegan alternatives. We will explore what is gaining traction and why. We will also unpack how TikTok and Gen Z are influencing ingredient discovery, where social hype diverges from scientific reality, and why brands can no longer rely on real material data alone to support product claims. As regulatory scrutiny increases and consumers grow more educated, testing finished formulas, not just ingredients, is becoming essential. Hello, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It sounds like we've got a lot to cover in our episode, but it's all exciting stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. So I think we're always buzzing and talking about raw materials and ingredients and, what's innovative, what's coming, what is buzzing, where it's buzzing, whether it's, picking up momentum on social media platforms and things like that. But I guess I would love to understand from your perspective what ingredient or raw material trends you are seeing right now that really feel quietly significant. And if it's not viral yet.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's a fantastic question. And currently we're in this really weird spot in our industry, right? So it's no surprise that the economy is a little bit rough. The disposable income isn't quite what it used to be. So we're seeing people kind of going back to the basics a little bit, going back to the hyaluronic acid, back to the ceramides, back to the polypeptides. But I guess the caveat there is there are new and different ways to make all of those types of ingredients. And so for me specifically, I had the pleasure of being on the bench for a couple years, and now I'm transitioned more specifically to active ingredients, which might be a little bit more of what I talk about than anything. But there is always that full holistic picture, right? Because without a base chassis, you can't have those actives, but oftentimes those actives are our storytelling ingredient, right? And so really, really cool. But yeah, so big pictures, we're kind of going back to what we knew before, what we were comfortable with, but there's just new ways to get it there, right? And previously, ceramides used to always come from plants, but now there's actually ways to produce them via fermentation that they're skin identical. At Evonik, we have several skin identical ceramides, and if they're skin identical, that means they are going to be easier to absorb by your body. They're going to be more effective. And same thing in general is there's just new and innovative ways to produce some of these actives. And so that's pretty cool. And then, of course, we always have those people that are always trying the latest and greatest, and they're going to try it no matter what their setup is. And a lot of those things are going to be related more towards sensitive skin. That's been huge in our industry lately. So any kind of ingredient that we know won't hurt you, as well as texture's been huge. And so that's sort of where we'll differ from actives a little bit, right? So an active is great, but if you can really find an innovative texture, customers love that. And I get it. It's a super easy way. I say super easy. It's really hard to make some of these things, but it's an easy way to differentiate yourself is by this like really cool, innovative texture that feels great on the skin.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. So I'm a total texture person too. So can you talk to us a little bit about the new kind of innovative textures? Is it a twist on textures that have been around for a while? Is it a texture that you feel when a consumer immediately puts a product on the skin, or is it a texture that, sometimes we've got a really incredible formula that applies initially to the skin a certain way and then it breaks? And then
Yeah.
you have a completely different feeling almost immediately. So would love to understand a little bit more about like how those textures might be changing
Yeah.
there.
So the textures are so cool, and the drivers of your texture are going to be based off of your emulsifier and then of course your emollient, right? And so based off of the emulsifier you're using, if you're using a oil and water versus a water and oil, you're going to be able to get two completely different feels. A lot of times those richer, heavier, more like carrying creams are going to be a water and oil emulsifier, but then you can also lean into your emollients, and
Mhm.
each emollient and can be tailored in a slightly different way to give you a different feel. So at Evonik, we have a portfolio of about probably 12 different emollients, and
Mhm.
each of those emollients is going to allow you to have a different skin texture. Some are a little bit waxy, some are kind of smooth, some are silky. And the major thing is too, we are also trying to figure out how you can differentiate yourselves from like the tropical oils and, just normal oils in general. And one of the ways to tap into that, which is also our overarching theme today, is that fermentation and the way to produce that. So that way you're being good to Mother Nature, lowering your CO2 footprint. Really cool there. But yeah, so really the key to a great texture is something that your consumer is going to instantly connect with.
Mhm.
So whether it be you put it on and you immediately feel a cooling effect, you put it on and you feel this really like silky, velvety type of feel, that's going to get your consumer to be interested in your product. And that's also part of the beauty of having active ingredients, right? And so one of the big things is this holistic approach. So you'll want to use your emulsifiers, your emollients to get the crowd in. And then long term, you'll use those active ingredients that work on the time frame of 48 hours, up to 2 weeks to really start to do some of that wrinkle reduction, some of that moisturizing of the skin. And so that's really how a formulation can work in synergy. You have
Mhm.
that instant boom. So people wanted things yesterday. Well, here you go. Here's something that you'll feel great as soon as you put it on. And you kind of buy time for that active to start to work.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. When you're talking about emulsifiers and emollients, can you define that for our
Yeah.
listeners because everybody may not be very clear
Abs-
on the vocabularies?
Yeah, so an emulsifier is essentially what is going to give your cream, your lotion, your spray that texture. So an emulsifier, certain emulsifiers allow you to have a spray. Some emulsifiers allow you to have more of a rich cream or a lotion. So your emulsifier is going to be driving the like application, cream, spray, lotion, and then your emollients are essentially what are going to give your formulation the feel, that texture that they're known for.
Mhm.
So yeah, great question. But yeah, essentially those two things work in synergy to create your final formulation.
Amazing. So when you talked about textures, Are there any textures from the raw material side that are really trending right now and changing, and things that you are speaking to brands about when you're having conversations with them and you're looking at their portfolio or their assortment, how you can help them to level up on any textures and things like that so that they
Yeah.
can really differentiate with their competitors?
Yeah, totally. So the biggest thing in terms of spray lately has been not so much a texture thing, but a clarity thing. So aqueous serums, aqueous gels, aqueous sprays, people have really been gravitating to a type of formulation that is completely see-through. So meaning your final
Mm,
product, when you spray it on, it's crystal clear. So that's been pretty interesting and not something I saw coming because, to me, you want some kind of color, you want something kind of there, but the market has kind of shifted away to that. And then with respect to more so like the leave-on, as I would call it, so your more traditional skincare, people really are gravitating towards something that's going to give them a silkier type of feel,
mhm,
because I think what we're kind of conditioned to think is the silkier the feel, the more luxury it is. And
mhm.
so I think brands are realizing that they can kind of trick people into being like thinking, this is really nice, but at a cheaper price point, when they are able to include a couple of emollients or a specific emulsifier that will really add this nice silky, velvety feel to make it feel incredibly luxurious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I love that. So I'm somebody
Yeah.
who loves and can definitely appreciate a good texture. And also, like, as I'm aging, I think about how products look on my skin immediately upon
Mhm.
application. Like, if my skin is looking and feeling a little bit dry, other than just putting lotion on, like, what could I add that's going to really make my skin look and feel hydrated and moisturized? Anything like that, I'm a sucker for.
Yeah, 100%. And so much of that is gonna go back to that base chassis, that formulation understanding where you're just gonna put it on and you're going to get that like a dewy feel. It's going
Hmm.
to look a little bit shinier and you'll look it and your skin will also feel it. I mean, it's winter everywhere in the US. That means people's skins are going to be incredibly dry.
Hmm.
And so you are in this time of year looking for something where you can put it on very quickly and instantly feel that hydration effect. And
Yeah.
so it is absolutely great. Yeah, texture really can help elevate your brand right away. And honestly, it's through some pretty simple steps too, which is nice. It's not like this really process where you're going to have to completely go back and find a new vendor or find a new this, find a new that. It's just little
Hmm.
things that you can add to your formulation to really elevate your game.
Yeah, and we live in such an era where, we live by these filters, right? Everybody's
Hmm.
filtering their photos online. We're always talking about wanting to have airbrush looking skin, and so
Yeah.
anything that we can add to an ingredient or to a formula that will give us that look, I think in some cases is sort of what we're looking for, that immediate gratification. We just live in that kind of world these days.
Yeah, for sure. But that also ties into it, though, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
for a lot of people too, I'm learning that they are going to Sephora because they were influenced, right? They
Mhm.
saw something on TikTok or they saw something on Instagram, or better yet, their next door neighbor or their best friend was like, hey, check this out. And so it really is
Yeah.
kind of like it is our job as both a raw material supplier from Evonik as well as the brands to kind of keep that in the back of your head. Like, I can have the best product in the world, but if it isn't what is currently important to the people that are getting the content, it doesn't matter, right? And so
Mhm.
you always need to keep that in mind is who's your audience? And
Yeah.
your audience should always be the people, right? You
Yeah,
want to give them a product that they're going to love.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, you do have to like think about, okay, we want that airbrushy kind of look. Okay, so let's give people what they want and let's try and do it one safely, and
Mhm.
two, let's also make sure that we're doing it as well as we possibly can.
Yeah. I think to your point and talking about all the things that influence change in the industry and how that applies to raw materials, what does Evonik do on your end to stay ahead of that, to stay in touch with what consumers are wanting and what their wants are evolving and sort of staying ahead of that?
Yeah.
Do you work with an agency? Do you work with a group? can share.
Sure.
How do you stay ahead of that? And then how do you pitch those to brands so that everybody's not working with the same information?
Totally. Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So at Evonik, we are very lucky to have both a regional marketing team as well as a global marketing team. So the global marketing team will kind of maybe look for trends that are going from both Europe, Asia Pacific, and the US. And then in the US, we have two extraordinary ladies who are really driving the content that we are and the trends that we're trying to push out. A lot of it will come from Mintel. Mintel is a
Okay.
really nice database. A lot of it will come because you and I are consumers, right? And so it's what am I seeing, right? So I am as addicted to social media as everybody else. So, I'll be like, oh, wow, I keep seeing this. And maybe my colleague will come over and see the same thing, but in a slightly different way.
Mhm.
So we both have that like educational, as I would call it. Okay, Mintel is saying these are the launches. We're seeing a 10% increase in moisturization launches. We're seeing a 10% increase in vegan collagen launches. So we have the educational aspect. And then we also, as I call it, we have that passion. And the
Mhm.
passion is going to be whatever you as a consumer are interested in.
Yeah.
So that's it. And sometimes I'll be honest to you, sometimes sometimes our customers are the ones that alert me to the trend, because if I have if I have, 3 or 4 different briefs that all say the same exact thing, we miss something, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so then what we'll do is we'll just, instead of being proactive, we're a little bit more reactive and say, okay, what can we do? What formulations do we have in our database already that will match this trend? How can I take something in my portfolio already and fine tune it to help this marketing story along? And so
Mhm.
it's really cool, and it comes from anywhere you want it to be, which is neat, and also part of why our industry is as cool as it is.
Yeah, I agree. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about like organic, so let's get into like organic, local, or regenerative type of ingredients. Excuse me. What would you say? Where do you think the US based sourcing really makes sense for brands? And where do you see it becoming more limiting? So, you had talked earlier about carbon footprint and where sometimes we see the impact of whether it's weather impacting us or
Hmm.
tariffs and different things like that could potentially affect the larger scale of things. Where would you say, and where does Evonik sit when you are sourcing ingredients, making these, whether you're doing it more globally out of the US and even more local to the US? And, how do you communicate with contract manufacturers or even brands if you're meeting with brands about specific actives? How do you gauge that conversation about local versus more global?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a challenging topic at the moment, and I think the truth is the U.S. from a manufacturing point of view isn't quite where it is compared to the rest of the world.
Mhm.
And that's okay. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think that it's something that we can work on building up, but I also think we have to remember that we're a community. And so we only succeed if everybody else in the world succeeds. So I don't think that there's any shame in getting things, delivered over from Europe, et cetera, or South America, or anywhere where your heart desires. I do
Yeah.
understand now currently the tariffs make that a little bit harder to stomach
Mhm.
from a financial point of view. But the truth is, I mean, there are some fantastic actives that can be sourced in the United States, and there's some fantastic actives that can be sourced globally. It's just you got to figure out what is important to you as a brand or a contract manufacturer. Are you okay with potentially having to pay a little bit higher price because now what did cost you X now costs you X plus 10% or whatever that
Mhm.
tariff has to be?
Mhm.
Um, is it something where, you're the pride of your brand is, hey, we're made in America? Then heck yeah, man, like that's awesome. And so it's just sort of, it's a really honest and open conversation because anywhere you are, there's something cool to be had. I mean, there's some really unique extracts that are local to North America. I mean,
Mhm.
for example, we have one product that is actually sourced from Yosemite National Park. And there are other things that are sourced from the Patagonia, and the Patagonia is in South America and along in Argentina and Chile. So it's really just whatever your whatever is important to you, it's kind of the job of the raw material supplier to work with you. Like
Yes.
we work for you guys, right? And then you guys in turn work for the people of the United States. So tell us how to help you guys, and we'll do the best we can.
Yeah.
And then wherever that conversation leaves, there's pros and cons to both, right? And so in our plants in Europe, we have actually identified a really cool, it's an enzymatic process to produce our emollients. Our emollients are the things in the formulation that really can help dictate the skin feel, whether it's glossy or smooth or silky. And we do this through enzymatic catalysis. And this is one way to reduce your CO2 footprint by about 75% from
Wow.
traditional oils or traditional emollients.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's really, really cool. At the same point too, we have a company we acquired recently called Novachem. One of the things that they do is we have to source from very specific regions in Argentina and Patagonia, but we give back to the local community. So it is all how you're looking about things. And for a while there too, we were exploring, can we grow some of these plants in a hothouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can grow it in a hothouse, then you're not worried about good growing seasons or bad growing seasons and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
You can control the environment and the climate a little bit better.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of it is, and I think one of the things that we're really proud about is at Avonic, for the exception of a few very specific things, everything is either produced via fermentation
Mm-hmm.
or it's produced via a second or third generation feedstock. So a first generation feedstock is really nothing we want to be touching from the beauty industry, because that is like mission critical. That's going to be food for people. That's going to be going to your criticals. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like, looking good is super duper important. We all want to look like we're 25. Don't get me wrong. However, we also want to make sure people can eat. So what
Right.
we really try and do is we do second generation and third generation feedstocks. So
Okay.
essentially like the waste stream of, like, so let's say you're going ahead and you're trying to make, so for example, we have a product called EcoHand Soft Baobab. And the baobab fruit is a really incredible fruit for the people in Africa, and it's something called the green wall. And the truth is, the baobab fruit is really, really cool because the baobab tree itself has the ability to absorb water. And then as you go through periods of drought, it slowly puts water back into the environment. Over time, these baobab seeds drop from the trees, and you can go ahead and some of the baobab can be eaten, some of it cannot. And so what we do is we take the part of the baobab that cannot be eaten, so that waste stream, and we turn it into an emollient.
Mm-hmm.
We do something very similar too for we have a ceramide that is based on organic olive oil. We actually take olive oil waste. There's something called like olive oil acid, which
Okay.
humans cannot metabolize on their own. So we take that waste stream because nobody can use it, and we turn that into an active. So that's really where we're big, is like taking these waste streams and utilizing them in a different way for our industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really cool.
I love that because we've been talking about upcycling, right? That makes me think about upcycling. So
Hmm.
we've been talking about upcycling for gosh, what 3 years?
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really been gaining momentum, I feel like, over the last maybe 3 to 5 years, where we're seeing it represented more with suppliers, more on the brand side, more on packaging and like repurposing and things like that. So if we're talking about upcycling, I think, what would you say separates meaningful innovation from greenwashing? Because I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
sometimes there can be some confusion there, and sometimes it's a play on words. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
For sure. I mean, I think this comes down to another trend I'm seeing. I'm not sure if trend's the right word, but one thing I'm noticing in general is education.
Mhm.
We've hit a point in our society, and I think it's good, where people are questioning things. People are no
Yeah,
longer just taking things at face value. People are pushing back. And I think that's awesome. I
I
really do,
agree.
because there's so many outlets for us to do our Googling and to do our research. And I mean, you have to obviously double check your sources. You want to make sure you're getting it from a reliable source. You don't want it to be, your crazy grandmother's Facebook, maybe not the best source, but there are a lot of really good sources out there. And you're so right. I mean, greenwashing it still is a problem in our industry. And so what I would advise is you really need to look at what makes that company click. So what I tend to do, I do this for both competitive analysis of my competitors, as well as for brands that I'm looking at. I go into their website and I go up to their About Us and I read about their mission statements.
Yeah.
Is there substance there? Do they say, you know what, this is an initiative we did. We did this. We blah, 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 blah. This is important to us. Versus, does it look like it's just a bunch of keywords and buzzwords and stuff like that? So it really is just doing that due diligence to see what that company is advertising themselves as out on the internet. And I think probably years ago, it was probably pretty hard to figure out if somebody was telling a lie or telling the truth, but
what their position was. Yeah.
Yeah, but nowadays it's pretty easy. I know, do some Googling, type in some keywords into the Google search engine, just go to their About Me on their website, and you really get a feel for it, whether they're honest to goodness, or they're like, all right, maybe they're pulling my leg a little bit and it is some greenwashing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that some brands are still really trying to define what sustainability means to them, whether it's, being a plastic-free brand or introducing less virgin material into the environment.
Yeah.
If they are wanting to use more upcycled ingredients and things like that, I think some brands are still in a place where they're trying to figure that out. And so
Yeah.
having a partner like you, like Evonik, and contract manufacturers that are really focused on that, packaging partners that are really focused on, pitching that type of innovation and sustainability initiatives, I think is incredible. So thank you
Yeah.
for having such a position on that.
Well, hey, we appreciate you guys pushing us to it, to be perfectly honest, right? And I'll tell you, so for Evonik, we do aquatoxicity on quite a number of our products that we think need it. We do biodegradable studies to prove how quickly things can biodegrade, and it's important. I mean, we have a responsibility to Mother Earth to take care of her, right? And there are some really simple things that we can do. And I mean, if that's changing your packaging, if it's, switching from one ingredient supplier to another who has a better biodegradability of a similar inky, that really can like drive things. And I think you're right in that sustainability can mean a bunch of different things to different people, and that's okay. I mean, I think each brand is going, like, I know I have my passions that are so different than my wife's, right? And mine aren't any better or worse than hers. And it's just like, this is what I'm passionate about. I really, I really care about this one thing. Like, this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. And just as long as there's some substance behind that, that is what matters. And so, whether it is biodegradability, whether it is upcycled, whatever is going to make your brand click for you, that's awesome. Just make sure you're living by your word. Because again, people know we're no longer in the world where you can be like, I promise I'm doing it. One wrong thing on TikTok, and and that's kind of it. So,
and they will blow you up.
Yeah. And please, 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 please never be afraid to reach out and ask. Be like, hey, this is what I want. Is this reasonable? I will be honest with you. People tell me sometimes I'm a little too transparent. If it's a good idea, that's awesome. If it isn't a good idea, I will very politely tell you that, and we can walk down an alley to get somewhere even better than we were at previously.
Yeah, I love that. So you talked about Baobab earlier. What makes an upcycled ingredient viable for long-term use? Are there limitations? Are there restrictions? What do brands and CMs need to look out for? What are your thoughts on, long-term viability?
Yeah, for sure. And so I would say this is also where upcycling is a little bit niche. And so for sure, for upcycling to be a sustainable thing, you need to make sure that people are going to be utilizing whatever that ingredient is for multiple years. And so, like, for example, the baobab, has been used for centuries and centuries and centuries. So we know that that one's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We have had products in the past though where we were like, oh, this is neat, and then over time we were like, oh, this is not sustainable because humans are a little bit fragile, right? So okay, we really really like. This is just an example I'm pulling out. We really liked this upcycled blueberry extract. Well, at one point, not as many people were eating blueberries, so there wasn't as much extract, and there wasn't as much second generation feedstock. And so it's really, you just kind of need to do some due diligence. And again, we're happy to support you on that and see is. So honestly, I know I keep circling back to this, but just do a little bit of Googling. I've never heard of the baobab before. Okay, is this Eric pulling my leg or not? And so Google it. Okay, well, it's been around for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so realistically, it's been here for centuries and it will continue to be here. And so, not a great answer for you, but it's a lot of just figuring out, okay, has this been used before? Will it continue to be used? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to, oh my gosh, look at this really cool thing. This is new, exciting, buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. It's only been out
Yeah.
for a couple years. Oh, maybe that's not as sustainable, right? Compared to, again, the example earlier with the olive oil waste,
Mm-hmm.
people are always going to eat olive oil. And
Yeah.
therefore, to produce olive oil, you're always going to have that byproduct. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just a lot of trusting your gut and using some common sense.
Yeah. When it comes to upcycled ingredients, so if someone comes to you with an idea of something,
Mhm.
and you put something into test or you go through the process to determine whether or not this is going to have long-term viability, what kind of timing goes into that before you start publicizing about a new
Oh yeah,
upcycled ingredient?
a minimum of about 3 to 5 years from our
Mhm.
end. We as Avonic do a lot of due diligence. So for our products, regardless of if it's an emulsifier, emollient, and active ingredient product protection, we provide a marketing presentation, a something called a PDR or a product document record, and
Mhm.
we also provide a toxicity screen. And so in all of that to get all that information, it takes anywhere from, if we're really lucky, 1 year all the way up to 3 to 4 years
Mhm.
from the idea. And so by the time we finally get all of those documents in a line, it's usually about 5 years. So if it is a truly upcycled ingredient from day one, if it's still there when we launch it, there's like there's a
Yeah.
very high chance that it will still be there. That's a little bit of our process over. For the upcycled, it's a little bit scarier than compared to some more of our market staples, right? So for like example, ceramides,
Mhm.
ceramides are going to be there they've been here for, I don't know, I think we started using ceramides in 1890. It was like the first example of ceramides in skincare. And we are going to continue. Yeah, it's crazy. And we're going to continue to using that for the next 100 years.
Mhm.
So in that type of idea with like that biotech to make that process more efficient, which I don't think I can legally call upcycling, but you can fine tune it, you can make it more responsible, you can make the product pure and minimize your byproducts.
Yeah.
So something like that is going to have way more, I'm going to say sustainability, because we know it's going to be a lot longer than some of
Mhm.
the upcycling things where, okay, let's do this for now and let's kind of see how this
And
goes.
let's see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love how you took us a little bit into biotech and we talked about fermentation earlier. Why do you think that we're seeing more biotech and fermented ingredients entering the mainstream beauty now? What do you think is driving that? What do you think is helping to sustain it? Where do you think it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about all the biotech in our industry because biotech has been around in pharma for decades and decades and decades. And it's nice to see that it's catching on in
Mhm.
cosmetics and personal care, to be honest with you. And it's driven from a couple different things, in my opinion. One, it is driven due to the fact that we are always trying to find some way to minimize our land usage,
Mhm.
our water usage, as well as our like energy input and output, right? And so basic chemical extraction is pretty resource intensive, and same thing for anything that we would make synthetically. And so biotech really offers us a nice way around that. It's really an easy way to lower your CO2, lower your water, and your footprint in general. So that's the first thing that's driving it. And that's also why I think it's going to be here to stay for a while. And the other thing is you're able to really make some nice products when you utilize and fine tune that biotechnology. So long gone are the days of, hey, here's a raw material, and 80% of it is what we think it is. 20% of it is like plus or minus the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And so now biotech allows you that when I give you an ingredient, regardless of what it is, 99.9% of that molecule is exactly the same. And so that's really the other part of it too, is we can fine tune these really cool chemistries, these biologies with the biotechnology platforms that are out there. And I really like it. I think it's going to be here to stay for a long time. You can also, if you ever want to try and figure out what the next big trend is, what you have to do is you kind of have to, I say this from like a little bit more of like from a business point of view. Look to see where people are investing their money. Look to see where the venture capitalists are and the governments are investing. And they're putting all of their money into biotech for the most part. And so whenever there is a lot of money into something, usually there's some really cool things that come out of it. So yeah, biotech has been around, and it's going to be here to stay for those reasons. Yeah.
And you think it'll continue to just gain more and more momentum as the industry evolves?
I do. And I think we'll just keep making cooler and cooler molecules. And I do hope too that we'll get to a point where we will also be able to make things for not as crazy of a price point. Because I will say, I think that is one way for brands to really differentiate themselves. If you can have a really nice product at a mid-range price point, you really excite people. And that's one thing that I can say from both somebody who's selling ingredients as well as somebody who buys a lot of ingredients. I mean, I wish I could always buy that top shelf, and my wife wishes we would, but every now and again, you got to be like, this is good. The price point is exactly where it needs to. And I really do think biotech can help with that as well. And I guess to the other part, which I just kind of realized as we're talking about this, is biotech also eliminates the need for like animals, right? And so we can utilize biotech to make things that are truly vegan. For example, at Evonik, we have something called Vicolage Fortify. And Vicolage is our platform of vegan collagen. And so right now, if you have a product and it has collagen on the inky, it's coming from some kind of animal source. And we have actually developed a recombinant DNA technology to produce the same polypeptide or the same sequence as the collagen in your body. And so that would be the other major thing for biotech, is it does allow us to open up the door to create these really cool compounds that previously would have come from animals, that are no longer need to come from animals, which one, of course, allows you to have a vegan claim. And two, for anybody who doesn't know, when something comes from an animal, oftentimes the product isn't always robust. So sometimes you're going to have, for example, hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid used to come from roosters, actually. And sometimes that molecular weight would be 1,000 kilodaltons. Sometimes that molecular weight would be 2,000 kilodaltons, right? And so because of that, and it's intrinsic to anything that's going to come from an animal, and your patterns might change, the way that the molecules are connected. And so the biotech also eliminates a lot of that potential, I want to say uncertainty, which isn't quite the right word, but it makes it way more precise and accurate. Because so when you do something via biotech, same molecular weight, same sulfation pattern every single time. And that's awesome.
It's so replicable, right?
Exactly. Thank
it's
you.
Identical,
Way
yes.
super robust.
Yeah.
Super duper robust. Yeah.
So you talked about biotech essentially replacing what ingredients have historically required wouldn't previously be vegan or, cruelty free. Is there a position that engineers are currently taking to prioritize certain ingredients and and bioengineering something so that an ingredient that has historically been very high in demand but doesn't meet those like vegan standards is now able to be reproduced essentially via like through biotech.
Yeah, totally. So it really is going to be that collagen. Collagen was huge in the wellness industry for the
Mhm.
past couple years in the US. I think Jennifer Aniston actually kind of started it. She had a collagen milkshake, and that really is what started to take it off. Personal care is interesting because it also, so essentially, too, if you look at the trends in healthcare and diet and whatnot, about 2.5 to 3 years later, it's when it hits our industry.
Mhm.
And so now we're starting to see that. And so collagen in food, that's okay to not be vegan because a lot of people do eat pork, meats, etc.
Well, that's
How,
true. Yeah.
yep. But interestingly enough, we don't want any animal products in our cosmetics.
Mhm.
And so that's really where engineers, and particularly at Avonic, we've really prided ourselves, whatever that word would be. We've done a really nice job to create this vegan collagen, and it's what I would call. Some people get a little bit scared at the word vegan collagen
Mhm.
because there's some stigma to it. The stigma is that there has been a couple lawsuits against brands that have used the word vegan collagen in their inky
Mhm.
and that's not in the PCPC, the people that like dictate who they dictate what you can put on your labeling, but not even your claims, just on like your inky deck. And so if it says collagen on it, therefore it has to come from an animal. So there were some brands that had put vegan collagen, something in their inky, and they actually ended up getting sued. So because of that, there's
Oh.
this little bit of hesitation with
Mhm.
vegan collagen. And so if that is a hesitation, I understand that. I tend to look at it as polypeptide because everybody loves peptides, me included. And it's just that's essentially what collagen is. It's just a bunch of peptides put together, so
Mhm.
polypeptides. And we produced a really, really nice way. It's vegan. It's the same molecular weight every time. It's the same sequence every single time.
Mhm.
That's probably where our biggest impact has been for taking things that were previously animal based and then going ahead and turning them into vegan.
Mhm. How do you think brands are doing at educating consumers about this shift, would you say? Do you think
Yeah,
we're doing a good job at it? Do you think we need to
I
put a little more oomph behind
oh
it?
man, I like to say I have one of the luckiest jobs in the world because I love what I do. I love the portfolio I work with. I love the people I work with. I get to work with very smart people. I get to then talk to very, very smart people. I feel so bad for the brands because they have to educate the mass public. And some people pick it up easily. Other
Mhm.
people do not. And so we really do, I don't want to say we have an educational issue. We just have a lot of people that don't fully understand things. And that's okay. And it is our job as scientists and as communicators and honestly as humans to
Mhm.
kind of break it down to be like, hey, this is what is true. This is
Yeah.
what is not true. And again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about of yes, you are going to be influenced. There are people on TikTok that are going to say things, but you need to listen to the people that have some claims behind them that aren't just, looking it up on Wikipedia, going to some Google blog sites and like
Mhm.
reading some really scary study that's not actually true. You really need to make sure you're getting your information from brands who are, consultants or anybody who knows what they're talking about. And that starts at the raw material supply side. That also starts at the brand side. And it's also on people as well to just use your common sense to say, does this seem a little bit weird?
Mhm.
And stuff like that. And it is definitely something we struggle with, but it's not new. I
Yeah.
think particularly in the political climate, everybody's like blowing up, blah, 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 blah. But let me tell you, like when I was growing up, I remember my grandparents saying some things and I was like, that makes no sense, And so like this has always been here. We've always just need to make sure that we're educating, learning, and kind of thinking to ourselves, does this make sense?
Yeah, exactly. To your
And
point.
double checking too, right? Don't just take one person on TikTok for their word. Take it, resonate with it, then do your own research, do some
Hmm.
Googling. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about what is real and what isn't real.
Yeah. I think to your point, we live in such a digital age where, you know, Gen Alphas are so influenced by social media, TikTok, YouTube, all these different, media platforms. And so, my 10-year-old daughter, she'll come to me all the time, Mom, look at this on YouTube or look at this on TikTok. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? I'm like, babe, you can't believe everything you see. It's
Yeah,
not true.
totally.
So then I have to go online with her, look at a couple of like very reliable sources
Hmm.
and confirm with her what's accurate and what's inaccurate because you just
Yeah.
can't believe everything you see and hear.
And I think also you shouldn't feel embarrassed. Like,
Yeah.
I think some people are like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I'm embarrassed to ask." Like, don't be. Like, I still believe some. Like, I remember when I was in grad school at this point. I
Mhm.
remember, so in grad school, I used to do a community outreach with some of the local schools who just like didn't have the right money or enough money to do some of their own experiments.
Mhm.
And so I had the backing of VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. They were very, very generous and they gave a lot of money for these science experiments to do with kids. And I found this one on YouTube that looked so cool. So cool. It had like, it was like you take two things, you rub it together, and then after you rub them together, you like use the specific chemical and it like creates like lightning in a bottle. This really seemed so cool. And I was so enthralled with it. And then I went to go do it because I always tried to test it out beforehand. And I totally got. As soon as I like started putting things together, I recognized in my head, I was like, oh, wait, this
Wait.
is never going to work. And again, at that point, I was in grad school. I already had a bachelor's degree. I was working on my PhD. And so, you know
Mhm.
what? I watched the video of somebody and I could just see them sitting over there and giving me some side eye and being like, hey, let's keep that judgment to yourself. But yeah, so don't be embarrassed to ask. It's okay. We don't need to know everything.
Mhm.
If something seems a little bit off, that's okay. Just ask about it. No big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm somebody who believes in that education is power. I feel like we are always learning because the industry is always changing and evolving. And we have to have the mindset that we don't know everything because everything is always changing.
Yeah, totally. And please, and I hope that I never become somebody who thinks who knows everything because at that point something's wrong,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yeah. So for sure, never be afraid to learn something new. Open a book, and there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I don't know,"
I just don't know.
you know.
Yeah,
And there's nothing
exactly.
wrong with that. Yeah,
Exactly. And I think that's also the really beautiful thing about networking is the more you build your network, the more people you have in your network that know things that you don't know and vice versa. And it's just a really beautiful opportunity for teaching.
yeah, I totally agree.
So we talked a little bit about we've been talking about TikTok and social media platforms. How do you because TikTok is so influential, I think, to all generations, how do you think TikTok is really changing the way ingredients are gaining traction to our detriment, but also to our benefit?
Yeah, totally. I think one of to the detriment's always a little bit easier to talk about, so we can start there, then we can end on the positive. But
Okay.
there's the phenoxyethanol. Like that was just such a mess, and that wasn't exclusively due to TikTok by any means, but it was just the blog, one post on the internet that then went viral on a blog, and then the next thing you know, everybody's like, oh no, blah 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 blah, pee
Can't
is
do it,
bad, is
can't do
bad, is
it.
bad,
Yeah.
and it's the truth of it is, yeah, for sure, it's not great, but it's not great at really high levels. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing too. And please don't think I'm saying that there's anything wrong with this, but it's the sulfate, and so in our industry, a lot of things are sulfate free. And I
Mhm.
understand that because of SLS or SLES, which are two surfactants that cause irritation, the sulfate based surfactants that cause irritation in the body. But we went sulfate free, meaning there are some good sulfates, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Not every sulfate is going to cause some irritation. Sometimes it's in there as a co-stabilizer. Sometimes it's in there to do its own biologies type of thing.
Yeah. So it became a general fear
Hmm.
and or avoidance, right? We were just avoiding
Exactly.
surfactant, yeah,
All
sulfates
sulfates.
across the board.
Exactly. And there are some good things out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like that's definitely been two of the bigger like red flags that have come from this. But I would say two of the positives that have come from this have just been the education on things like hyaluronic acid.
Mm-hmm.
Hyaluronic acid has been around for a long, long time. And you can see, though, more and more people are going back towards it
Mm-hmm.
because there's been a lot of trending TikToks about it, about how if you are somebody who wants a minimalistic routine, one of the guiding factors of that tends to be hyaluronic acid.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing with ceramides. For if you go ahead and you look at a lot of the staples of our industry over the last 20 years, they have
Mm-hmm.
ceramides in them. And so it's been interesting in that they're kind of like, we're going back to maybe what I would call like a vintage beauty, and that like, things that we used to use we're coming back to. And
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool. And a lot of that is driven by TikTok and people like thinking about it and being like, oh, look, so I saw this one thing and I looked at the ingredient list or the Inky and it had ceramides. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, this one also. And so like that's been pretty cool.
It
Yeah, I've
ignites
I've
the
enjoyed that.
conversation in a different way and in a fresher way, I think
Ex-
sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, it's been really cool to watch. And same thing with some peptides. You're seeing peptides stalled out a couple years ago, right about the beginning of COVID. People
Mm-hmm.
started to shy away from peptides, and now people are starting to get back into them. And again, a lot of that has been driven by people on TikTok and realizing that
Mm-hmm.
there's not a single peptide, but there's a lot of different peptides, and each of those
Yeah.
peptides can do something different.
Yeah.
And then just full circle too, I'm really seeing it with textures. If you like want to make a bajillion dollars, create a really fun texture and get some TikTok influencer to like rave about it.
Mm-hmm.
You will be the next bajillionaire, like guaranteed, because you see
That's
a
where we're
lot of
going,
texture.
Eric. That's where we're
Yeah,
going. You and I,
we,
we're gonna do it.
yeah, we can't win. That lottery doesn't seem to be panning out, but yeah. So, and textures too. And I mean, that's also, I think we sometimes think of education as TikTok, but also like you're seeing the textures, you're seeing like them put it on as well as them peel it off, and like
Mm-hmm.
how good it can make your skin look even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you think brands are feeling about the pressure to formulate faster based on social trends and things that, influencers are talking about, or things that, to your point, when, maybe influencers were starting to, have some negative feedback about peptides. And so that kind of killed peptides for a little while. And now they're starting to ramp back up again. How do you think brands are feeling the pressure to formulate based on interactions on social platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is stick to what's important to you. If you are a brand and obviously you're listening to this podcast, that means you have some success, right? You care a lot about your own business, you care about what you're putting out there. Whatever makes you get up in the morning, whatever that core value is to your brand, stick with it. Obviously, like listen a little bit, but take everything with a grain of salt. The world is incredibly secular. And
Mhm.
even though it might seem like it's falling out of favor now, that's okay. I'm sure it will come back. And think about it too in a different way. Maybe all you need to do is you don't need to reformulate or change your formulation. Maybe you just need to change your marketing story, right?
Mhm.
We have a number of different products that for years were really popular. Then they started to get less popular. And so what we did is we just changed the marketing a little bit.
Mhm.
Same exact formulation, same exact products, just a different way to look at it. So I wouldn't read and I wouldn't be too reactionary. If you see something where you're like, oh, that's awesome, go ahead, be excited about that, jump on that trend. But don't think just because, one day you see something pop up, be like, oh my gosh, we have to get rid of this. We have to discontinue that.
Mhm.
If there's no immediate safety issue, you're probably okay.
Mhm.
And I think too, people to a point intrinsically hate change. And so, yes, we do listen to a lot of these things, and sometimes we're willing to go out and buy a new product. we're willing to try something new. But also a lot of the times I find that people go back to what they know.
I mean,
So,
we're seeing that a lot now with more and more brands are starting to rebrand. So they're not even
mhm,
changing their formulas as much as they're just changing the look of their packaging
yeah.
and or the
Oh,
look of
yes.
their marketing. Yes, because
So
it's the
so
same
true.
formula, but it's like, let's refresh, let's give
Yeah.
people, let's remind them that we're the same company with the same formulas, but we are changing with the times and we're not being stuck in vintage
Yeah.
times when packaging colors are off. Color palettes are changing every year, and what the eye is attracted to changes too. So I think that's another, to your point, you talked earlier about just changing the marketing.
Yeah.
I think brands are getting on board with that too, and not necessarily changing a good formula, like a hero product, more just really changing the look of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, like I keep saying, it's like my big thing is always like find your passion, you know?
Mhm.
And so whatever that passion is that started that brand, lean into it and
Mhm.
just talk to whomever. I don't want to say talk to whomever, but talk to somebody you really trust and see how can you take what you already have and
Mhm.
change slightly. And if you do need to come out with a new line, you do need to change something, then so be it. But
Mhm.
just I don't want people I never want people to be coming out of something from a reactionary point of view or something out of like fear,
Mhm.
because like
I agree.
that's when we get into trouble. And again, if you've made your brand this far, if it's important to you, obviously it's important to the people who are buying your product.
Mhm.
Take a deep breath, evaluate it, talk to some people you really trust, and then make an educated decision from that.
Yeah. You and I were talking before this podcast when we had spoken, maybe it was last week. We were talking a little bit about how social media influences even our kids, right? I don't know if you
Hmm.
have any kids. I have a ton of kids.
Nice.
But I have, but my youngest, she's probably more influenced by social media than any of my other kids were. So much so that she kind of falls into that whole like Sephora kids
Hmm.
sort of phase.
Yeah.
What would you say to brands depending on sort of what their focus is, looking at it from the perspective that, these Gen Alpha kids are so like everything they see online, they want to try, regardless
Yeah.
of, they don't understand what the ingredient listing is. They don't understand what those ingredients are. They just want to use it because they see it on social. It's not suitable for their skin. It's
Hmm.
it's going to kill their barrier. It's going to do all of these things because the reality is parents are so busy and they're not necessarily watching their kids. They're taking them to Sephora and like, okay, if you want this, if this is what you saw, I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
And maybe parents aren't as educated either. So they don't know
Sure.
either. They're just like, well,
Yeah.
I see it on Sephora ads and things like that and circulars. So is that something that you're focusing on when you're having conversations with brands? Like, who is your audience? And, talking to them about
Yeah.
certain ingredients to be
I
mindful of that.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to steer the conversation that much when I'm talking to my customers for a couple different reasons. One, for the most part, when you're a kid and if you want to be using something, like just go ahead and use a very simple moisturizer, right?
Mhm,
You don't need the retinols, you don't need polypeptides. Just like buy a very simple Vaseline, or if you want to make it prettier, the a step up from Vaseline type of thing, and
mhm,
just kind of lean into that. I think I honestly I don't get worried about a lot of things, but I always get a little bit worried when it comes to actives and kids. I
yeah,
think it's something that we need to be very mindful of. And if
mhm,
that is a core value of your brand, then just make sure you're doing it responsibly, right? There
yeah,
are some actives that kids can use, that's a ceramide, a hyaluronic acid. For the most part, those are going to be completely okay with kids, but please no retinol, please no
mhm,
ascorbic acid, nothing that can like really do damage down the line. And this is also where I would say that testing is really important. So at Avonic, we try and do a pretty thorough clinical study on all of our actives, and our actives in that we have an age range. Traditionally,
mhm,
they're from 18 up to 72. For some products that we focus a little bit older, it might be 56 to 75. if you are somebody whose brand is geared towards kids, please just make sure you're being responsible. You're looking at your testing, you're looking at what's out there in the literature. And again, like always feel free to reach out to somebody, reach out to a raw material supplier, reach out to a clinical testing agency. We'll be honest with you and we'll say, okay, yeah, your formulation is bare bones. We think it should be completely fine. Or these actives might be a little bit worrisome.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my first advice. My second advice is if brands aren't going to be that PC, that's okay. That's on them. I don't love it, but it is. At that point, I would put it a little bit more on the parents to just have a basic education of, okay, so these are the actives that are good for kids. These
Mm-hmm.
are the actives I need to stay away from.
They're the
Yeah.
no-nos. Yeah.
And I get it too. I mean, I'm not a parent and I am pretty busy, so I can't imagine how that would happen if you have kids and the kids is coming, and I'm sure you just want to appease them and get out of the store, but just having a really basic understanding of that is good. And in general too, I sometimes get the question from brands being like, should we target like young kids? Because in theory, like if you can get the kid hooked on to your product younger, blah, 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 they'll keep using it. And the truth is that doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are actually way more apt to use whatever their parents use. And
Yeah.
so, like, for sure, you'll sometimes be influenced. You'll be like, "Ooh, I really want this." But I find 9 out of 10 times when somebody goes to college, they're using the same exact products that their parents used, the
Yeah.
brands at least. So I don't really think you always need to gear towards teens because as bright as that sun, excuse me, can shine, it
Mm-hmm.
can get dull equally as fast. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a bright light and then a quick burnout. So again,
And also their skin is changing anyways, right?
yeah, that
Depending
too.
on their age and hormones and all of that. So my
Yeah, for
daughter
sure.
and I, we kind of have like our evening skincare routine. She always wants to use my products. So because I'm in my 50s, I'm like, you can't use retinol, you can't use
Yeah,
this,
sorry,
you can't
honey.
use that. Like, sorry,
Yeah,
babe. She's really
yeah.
good. She does read the packaging, but she doesn't really understand what all of it means. So,
No,
you
why
know,
should she? Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
she's
Like I
got
don't sometimes, right? Yeah,
but she hears about it on social. So then I do
yeah.
feel like it's my responsibility to talk her through things, to sit down and look at, without spending
Hmm.
too much time and boring her to death, saying, okay, make sure that you ask me before you grab something off of my vanity. If something says retinol, if something says vitamin C, things like that, those
Yeah,
are no-nos for you. Like,
yeah.
and I have products for her specifically, whether it's a cleanser or moisture, like very simple things,
Hmm.
moisturizer. That's pretty much it for her.
Yeah.
And then things that we do together too that will increase her, evening skincare routine is really just like a facial lymphatic brush, something that's gonna make
Yeah.
her feel like she's like extra special. So maybe it's introducing things like
See,
that aren't ingredient driven.
and think about it too. This is also going, see, this is why this has been so much fun. And this comes back to our original thing of texture, right? So if you
Oh
can
yeah.
if you can get your daughter to really like a fun texture, that's going to change it. Because there's some things that are like officially, it's like you put it on and then over time it starts to like bubble and
Mm-hmm.
cream and fizz. People love that. So like
Yeah.
maybe that would be my suggestion next time is focus more so on textures, fun textures and fun packaging.
Yeah.
Like totally leave those actives out. So
Oh my gosh, I love that.
yeah,
My last question before we close is why do you think relying on raw material test data really is no longer sufficient for brand claims? So,
yeah,
in our next episode, we'll be speaking with a claim substantiation and testing company because I feel like it's just a perfect segment into
yeah.
that from this. Because I know that sometimes I speak with brands who say, well, we've got, this kind of data from the raw material, but you really need to test the finished formula for active levels and really kinds of claims that you can capture from that. So what are your thoughts on that? One, is that something that you and Ivana are in agreement with? And really, like, at what point is raw material test data not sufficient for claims brands are trying to make?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so it's going to be dependent. So every raw material supplier has a different level that they're willing to invest into their claims. And so at Evonik, as you know, I'm very prideful to work for Evonik. And I mean, we have something called the Evonik Skin Institute, which vets almost every single one of our active ingredients and some of our emulsifiers and emollients, looking for hydration data, acne, et cetera, all the way through. I think it's really awesome that brands are doing their own clinical testing because you know what? I seem like I'm a very trustworthy guy. I'm sure people would love to have a beer with me. I understand that you don't necessarily want to take my word for everything. And also, I am a salesman. I would love for you to use it at the highest use level. I know you're not. That's okay. And so we try and do some of our testing right at the midpoint, right? Or sometimes we do our lower use level. But I also know that brands, sometimes even though our use level is 0.1, maybe they use it underneath it. And I also know too that you don't only use Evonik actives. Maybe you use one Evonik active and one Croda active. And so you really want to see what that synergy is going to be. A lot of formulations, I think the average formulation has 3 to 4 actives in it now. And so you really want to see how that synergy is going to be. So yeah, by all means, like use the raw material claim substantiation as your baseline to prove it's there, to prove that, okay, this is worth my investment. My brand will get some benefit from this. And then go ahead and, you know, make that magical formulation, take your use levels, add 2 or 3 different actives, and then go ahead and retest it and watch that synergy happen. I'm all about synergy, both as a human and in formulations. So
Awesome. I love that. Well, Eric, thank you so much. This was
thank
so
you.
informational, so amazing. I loved learning about all the different things that are happening on the ingredient side of things. So I think what keeps coming up in this conversation is that beauty in the future of beauty isn't just about chasing ingredients, right? It's about building systems that perform, scale, and stand up to scrutiny. So, I mean, I think that we spoke a lot about that, and I think that Evonik is right on the mark with it. So, thank you so much for joining me today. It was
Thank you for having me.
amazing. Join us in our next episode for an insightful deep dive into the world of clinical testing with Brian Epperfield.